The holiday season overwhelms us with a deluge of products. Mountains of stuff tower in store aisles, overflowing shopping carts, and parcels stacked high beneath decorated trees. Amidst the chaos, there's a cacophony of boxes, wrapping paper, and the persistent buzz of consumerism. Yet, this frenzy of consumption isn't confined to the holidays alone. Every December, we're confronted with the stark reality of overconsumption and overproduction, particularly in the heart of the imperial core. It's a season where corporations dictate our desires, urging us to purchase gifts that promise joy while fueling the relentless consumption machine. But beneath the surface lies a deeper issue, one that exposes the self-destructive tendencies of our society. Over the past 5 decades, the global economy has expanded exponentially, paralleled by a steady rise in temperatures. Economic growth, capital accumulation, and escalating emissions have become inseparable companions on this trajectory. It's a vicious cycle where the pursuit of endless growth comes at the expense of our planet's well-being. In this video, we'll delve into the urgent need for an alternative path, one that challenges the growth paradigm and embraces the principles of degrowth. But before we explore the concept in depth, let's understand why it's essential to dismantle the cult of endless growth that dominates our world today. Think about it. Since factories started churning out goods during the Industrial Revolution, our global economy has been on a wild ride. We've been making and buying stuff at an insane pace. But here's the kicker. This obsession with growth isn't just about making money. It's become a belief system. Politicians and companies love to brag about how the economy is growing. They say it's a sign of success. But is it really? Sure, for some people, more economic growth means a better life, but for many others, it's not so great. It's like a magic trick. It looks amazing on the surface, but behind the scenes, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. In fact, all this growth is wrecking the planet. Every year, we waste so much stuff: water, food, energy, you name it. And the sad part is, a lot of what we buy and throw away isn't even necessary. It's like we're stuck in a never-ending cycle of buying things we don't really need. And here's the kicker. All this buying and making stuff is bad news for the environment. You see, a big part of our economy runs on fossil fuels, the stuff we burn to power factories and cars. And burning all those fossil fuels pumps out a ton of pollution into the air, making climate change worse. So, while it might seem like endless growth is the key to success, it's actually causing a whole lot of problems. But don't worry, in the next part, we'll dive into why we need to rethink this whole growth thing and explore some cool alternatives. So, if endless growth isn't the answer, then what is? Well, that's where degrowth comes in. It's like hitting the reset button on our economy and our way of life. Imagine a world where we don't have to constantly buy and consume more stuff to feel happy. A world where we focus on what really matters, like taking care of each other and the planet. But here's the thing. When we talk about degrowth, we're not just talking about slowing down the economy. We're talking about a whole new way of doing things, one that's fairer, greener, and more sustainable. Instead of chasing after endless growth, degrowth is about finding balance. It's about producing and consuming only what we really need, instead of constantly chasing after more. And here's the best part. Degrowth isn't just some pie-in-the-sky idea. It's actually based on science. Studies show that we need to drastically cut down on our carbon emissions if we want to avoid the worst effects of climate change. And degrowth is one way to do that. But of course, change won't happen overnight. It's going to take all of us working together to make it happen. In the next part, we'll explore what degrowth looks like in practice and how we can start moving towards a more sustainable future. So, how do we actually put degrowth into action? It sounds great in theory, but what does it look like in practice? Well, for starters, it means rethinking the way we measure success. Instead of just looking at how much money we're making or how fast the economy is growing, we need to consider other factors too, like people's well-being and the health of the planet. It also means reimagining our relationship with stuff. Instead of constantly buying new things and throwing them away when we're done, we need to focus on repairing and reusing what we already have. It's about moving away from a throwaway culture and towards a more sustainable way of living. But perhaps most importantly, putting degrowth into action means challenging the systems of power and inequality that drive endless growth. It means fighting for economic justice, environmental justice, and social justice for all. And here's the thing. We can't do it alone. We need to work together, as communities, as countries, and as a global society, to build a better world for future generations. Now, let's talk about the elephant in the room, the challenges and critiques of degrowth. Because let's face it, nothing worth doing comes without its fair share of skepticism and obstacles. Some people worry that degrowth will mean sacrificing our standard of living or going back to living like cavemen. But that couldn't be further from the truth. Degrowth isn't about making life harder, it's about making it better. Others fear that degrowth will lead to austerity measures or economic recession. But the reality is, degrowth is about reimagining our economy so that it works for everyone, not just the wealthy few. And then there's the concern that degrowth will hurt the global economy or lead to job losses. But again, that's not the case. In fact, degrowth can create new opportunities for meaningful work and community building. But perhaps the most important critique of degrowth is that it doesn't go far enough. Some argue that we need to completely overhaul our economic system, not just tweak it around the edges. And you know what? They might be right. Degrowth is just one piece of the puzzle. To truly create a more just and sustainable world, we need to challenge the systems of power and inequality that drive endless growth.